give someone in the news, the writing, journalistic profession, be careful now, don't misuse this. If you want to give someone the supreme compliment, you don't have to go and look up a lot of long words in arcane dictionaries. All you got to do is say, you know, pal, you remind me of Peter Chowka. There can't be a higher compliment in the field of journalism than having someone sincere say, you remind me of Peter Chowka. And Peter Chowka, you remind me very much of Peter Chowka. Congratulations on your whole journalistic career, and welcome once again to these proceedings. We have learned a great deal over the past 24 hours, 36 hours, 48 hours, since last Friday, when Soleimani was unceremoniously removed from the planet Earth. I would like to go over some of the things that we have learned. Obviously, aware of all the lessons of courtesy, I want the guest to go first. Peter, what have you learned about whatever, America, the Middle East, Iran, Trump's desire to go to war or to make a point without going to war? A lot of things we could learn. What did you take home from the past almost half week?
Well, Barry, I just want to start by saying it is a great pleasure to be with you again at the start of this new year, and I want to wish you and your audience a healthy and a happy New Year 2020. And my feeling from watching the events unfold of the last week are that we are at another flashpoint in our modern history, actually two of them. Things are heating up in the Middle East with Iran, and we also have looming in the background impeachment. So these are, in effect, the two I's, Iran and impeachment. And today, January 8th, 2020, it brings to my mind previous flashpoints in our recent history that ushered in great consequences and changes. Things like the Gulf of Tonkin in 1964, Iraq's invasion of Kuwait in 1990, and the build-up to the Gulf War the following year. The 9/11 attacks, the United States going into Afghanistan later in 2001, and of course the rather ill-conceived Iraq War that started in 2003. The outcomes of all of these, as well as other events, could not have been predicted at the outset, and in my opinion, we're facing a very similar scenario tonight.
Stay right where you are, everybody. All leaves have been canceled. Peter Chowka is our partner for this expedition for the entire hour. And we'll be right back after a very, very short On our Newsmaker line, Peter Chowka himself. I'm Barry Farber, honored to have him participate in these broadcasts for a whole solid hour. It makes me feel like the winner of some great prize when Peter Chowka agrees to do your show, and he's agreed to do this one. Peter, one thing that I think I learned By the way, we learned that Iran lies. That's not necessarily news. That's quite old. But here they said 30 Americans were killed in the Iranian counterattack over the weekend. And that's simply not true. By the way, you can bank on stuff like that. We don't lie about things like that. But the one thing that struck me is I don't know why this marked man, Soleimani, was so cavalier about where he was and who he was with and who knew where he was at any given moment. He was vulnerable. He was exposed. But look what the world has learned. America has mastered the art. If there are two people walking down a thoroughfare anywhere in the world, and they one of those people is a bad actor, a bad guy. America realizes there's American blood on his hands, and they're not going to let it go at that. Sets a bad precedent. And when the bad guys of the world realize that if those two people walking down a thoroughfare anywhere in the world, if they kiss good night or good morning or whatever, that can be the end of the bad guy kisser without significant harm to the good guy. And this belongs on page one of magazines about riflery and gunnery and things like that. But Peter, were you aware that there can be such precision takeout of people so that one person walking with another can be instantaneously eliminated from the earth, and the other so hardly treated, hardly mistreated, hardly inconvenienced at all. Tell me.
You know, Barry, it's amazing to me that President Trump took a brilliant strategic action in taking the advice of his top military advisors and surgically taking out Soleimani, who was one of the worst terrorists of modern time, with so much blood on his hands, including American blood, that it's really incredible. And this morning, when President Trump gave his speech to the nation and to the world, which everyone had been waiting to hear, he was measured, he was firm, and he was confident. Reminded me of President Ronald Reagan 3 decades ago at his best. President Trump announced today that he would immediately impose new punishing economic sanctions on Iran. He also, of course, said that he is not going to be goaded into a tit-for-tat military attack response on Iran. He's keeping our powder dry, especially in light of the fact of the ineffectiveness of Iran's missile attack on the U.S. bases in Iraq yesterday. He also said that President Trump said that he is not going to tolerate Iran getting nuclear weapons. He will not allow that. And he also pointed out that these missiles that were fired, the 16 of them from Iran into Iraq targeting American bases, they were basically paid for by the funds given to Iran in cash by President Obama's administration in order to encourage Iran to make the bad deal with the United States and Europe several years ago, which, of course, President Trump canceled. So if we had anything like a fair and objective media and press in this country, President Trump's actions in the past week and in his speech this morning would be seen as a major positive development. Instead, we have people like Nancy Pelosi promising that tomorrow she will introduce a resolution in the House of Representatives to restrain President Trump, to tie his hands as commander-in-chief, something that was never even hinted at when President Obama was running amok for 8 years, committing all kinds of unconstitutional acts, both domestically and abroad, and targeting numerous people for killing by drone strikes, which the Republicans never raised any objection to. So these are some of the things that are on my mind, showing the power, the value of peace through strength. And we know President Trump is not a warmonger. He's not looking to get us into another war. He's doing his best to get out of these foreign entanglements and make peace with some of our most significant adversaries, like Kim Jong-un in North Korea. He's offered a handout to Iran if they want to negotiate with us without precondition, and we will see what happens. But it's going to be up to the American people, I think, to do an end run around the media and the Democrats and say, we support what President Trump is doing. He's trying to make America great again, and now it's really up to us to help him, because he's not getting much, if any, help from the establishment, including the deep state, the media, academia, and the popular culture.
Well, have your secretary type it and I'll sign it. You said, if America had, and then you added language that if America had a praiseworthy media. We don't have such a media. You know what we have. Newsmaker line, I'm Barry Farber. And Peter, who better than you knows what kind of media we are dealing with? Oh, if we only had 24 hours of candor, of honesty in the media. I never dreamed that we would live in a country where our love of media would transcend every other measurement, and whatever the media preferred, the media dealt unto itself, and nobody was around to say nay. Nobody was around for any back talk. There seems to be no appetite or aptitude for back talk. The media says it. Blessed be the name of the game. If it weren't for you and maybe as many as a dozen others, Peter, I think that our media would be considered a disaster zone. Your turn.
Well, you know, Barry, you were an inspiration to many of us. As I've noted before, I was listening to you, one of the leading lights of New York talk radio, back in the 1960s, when I was in high school, and I respected and appreciated the mainstream media back then. And like you, I never thought in my wildest imaginings that we would be at a point that we are today, when about 95% of the mainstream media, according to independent objective studies at places like Harvard University, 95% are lined up completely against President Trump and what he is doing for no good reason. They're not reporting the facts, they're reporting propaganda. It was Andrew Breitbart who said before his death that politics is downstream from popular culture. And one of the real problems we face is that the popular culture, which has for many, many decades been on the left end of the spectrum, has had a profound and negative influence on media and on journalism, as well as academia and other aspects of life in the United States. So that today, thank God, we have a place like Fox News Channel, both on television and foxnews.com on the web. And many people on the conservative right are fond lately of criticizing Fox News. They say, oh, it's veering left. Well, I've written many articles about this, chapter and verse, on how Fox is not veering left. It's more conservative and more truthful than it's ever been in its 22, 23-year history. We also, thank God, have the new media represented on the Internet and in many places on terrestrial talk radio, where Americans who can still think for themselves and have some brain power can get accurate reporting. That's all we are advocating, is truthful, accurate, reality-based reporting and not spin. That's how I was taught to do it when I started writing for my high school newspaper. And then I worked in radio in college when I was at Georgetown University, and ever since, writing thousands of articles for various publications, including, in the past 2.5 years, over 200 articles for AmericanThinker.com. And all of my articles for American Thinker are accessible online, free. Anyone can go to my website, peter.media. That's http://peter.media, peter.media. And there's a link there to all of my articles in American Thinker, actually going back to 2007. And also some of the articles I wrote for the Epoch Times, and also a link to my Twitter, which is Chowka, P-C-H-O-W-K-A. In fact, I tweeted earlier today, Barry, that we would be doing this broadcast tonight, and the word went out to my 5,000 or so Twitter followers in the United States and around the world, because I'm very proud to meet with you again, Barry, because there's no one that I respect more in the media, whether old or new, than Barry Farber.
Well, I can live for 6 months on a compliment like that. Okay, we don't disagree about what we have in today's media. We may be able to generate some interest and some interesting guesswork and answers in how we wound up like this from a once upon a time upright, praiseworthy and proud media to this disgusting rot gut disgrace that we have today. We'll be right back to that intersection with Peter Chowka. I'm Barry Farber. My father, Raymond Farber, was not known as a raconteur, a great storyteller, but he had a couple of stories that knocked him over the fence. He was late coming home. He was a traveling salesman, late coming home one Friday, and we were, getting concerned. And it turned out he had gone off the road and during a rainstorm, and he was a little bit too far on the right. A farmer came by with the legendary mule and was making preparations to pull Daddy out of there. And he kept saying, you know, you shouldn't have gone that far over to the right. And my father said, yeah, you know, you're right, I understand that. And the farmer could not get off that thing. You know, so if only you hadn't gone that far to the right, or, you know, if only you had gone, you know, a little bit to the right, but not that far to the right, you wouldn't be in this trouble. And Daddy said, okay, can you hitch up that mule and pull me out? I feel like that right now, Peter Chowka, because how in the world do we move on when we don't understand how we got here, when this disgusting and sycophant media that loves to be cosseted and posited in the back pocket of the far left. What is your diagnosis?
Barry, here's how I think of how we've gotten to where we are with the media today. Starting in the 60s, the 1960s, if not before, our educational system in this country, particularly at the university level, was targeted and taken over by the left, the socialists, the Marxists, and yes, the communists. They began to train the new generation of journalists. We now have a point where critical mass has been achieved, and these left-wing trained journalists, the vast, vast majority of whom vote Democrat, have now moved into the top ranks of journalism. So the standards that we grew up with in journalism are out the window. They're gone. We also have things like the 8-year administration of Barack Obama, who promised to transform this country. And I think that gave the journalists, most of whom were on the left, and Democrats, the opportunity to really throw anything like objectivity out the window and work hand in glove with President Obama and the Democrat Party to achieve their ends of globalism, of socialism, of socialized medicine, etc. We also had a transformation of this country beginning decades ago by immigration, including illegal immigration from primarily low IQ countries. Now, that is not my opinion. That is a fact. Among American students, we had, starting in the 60s, the complete brainwashing of young people, so that today, Barry, it's like you and I, people of our generation, seasoned senior citizens, are old enough to remember what it was like when America was great. But people much younger than us, say younger than 40 or 50 years old, have no frame of reference, they have no memory, and everything they read, see, or hear about America in the past is negative. I mean, we have people like Governor Cuomo of New York saying recently that America was never great. We have the wife of President Obama saying at one point she was never proud of the United States until America nominated her husband as president. Basically, we have sociopathic individuals running the media now. They're a bunch of liars. They're sick, Barry. They are absolutely sick. And what we can do about it? Well, fortunately, there's a lot of good websites. There's programs like yours, Monday through Friday, which is appointment listening. We have websites like RealClearPolitics.com, Breitbart.com, AmericanThinker.com, and many others, which are doing their best, striving to find the facts and report the reality. We have brilliant writers out there like Victor Davis Hanson, for example, who frequently appears on Fox News. We have the primetime schedule of Fox News, basically 7 nights a week, which has excellent guests on telling the truth. So there are options, there are alternatives, and the battle now is, will we be able to make it work for us this year, this very important year when we have probably the most significant election in our modern history looming this coming November, and we will see if President Trump will be allowed to have another 4 years to continue to make America great again, or if we're going to fall back into the pit of socialism and closer than ever to the dystopian future that the left appears to want.
I remember those good old days in high school and college where we would stretch a point, maybe leave out a disadvantageous fact, highlight one that didn't deserve highlighting, but sort of cozied up to our personal feelings about things. But lying the way they lie today, without a thought as to, look what I'm playing with. I'm playing with minds. I'm in a very sordid end of a very sordid business. How did I get here, and how soon can I get out? They're playing our song right now. When we get back together, help me go back to those days when we simply did not lie. We may have disliked the truth we were writing about. We may have done a little editing and shortened a passage or two here and lengthened one or two there. But lying, that was never part of our honor code. We didn't raise our hand and take any oath. We didn't have to. It was enough of an honor and a thrill to be a member of the media. Question mark, exclamation point. Back soon. Do you remember sitting there in high school, in college, no word processors anywhere around, there's a lot of typewriters, and do you remember when you came upon a fork in the road where you had to write something that you did not want to write about a certain person, politician, whatever? You didn't want to write that, but, gee, you'd have to lie if you didn't report it. I'm proud to say that I won every single battle with myself. I didn't lie. I may have stretched a point. I may have given a politician in college I liked a little too much of a benefit of the doubt. But lying the way they do today, what do you make of it?
You know, Barry, I remember the past very, very well. And in fact, lately, I'm trying to get back in touch with that past when America was great. I'm trying to watch more classic films from the early days of American cinema, classic television from the golden age of television, 1950s, 60s, 70s. Listen to popular music when it was really excellent. It was part of the American culture before it was perverted by the sick and sociopathic Hollywood manufactured machine of today. And, you know, President Trump has been an inspiration. He's made it very, very simple. MAGA, M-A-G-A, Make America Great Again. God bless him. But I believe we all have a part in trying to achieve that. To facilitate making America great again, to give it a real chance to succeed, we need to return to these traditions and the principles that inspired our founding fathers and Americans for most of its history. And I believe that means returning to our faith as well. Barry, after almost 6 decades of reporting and study, I've had to conclude that the division, the discord, the lack of discernment that we see today all around us are symptoms of evil at work. And I believe that to counter that evil, we need a restoration of faith, including prayer. Our civilization was founded on Judeo-Christian history and teachings, which gave man the divine right to use his time here on earth for positive ends. And I feel like the figures of the Old and the New Testament were among the founders of our Western civilization. They gave our civilization its spark and its purpose. And the more we've turned away from that in recent decades, the more that we have gone downhill. We've substituted that faith, those traditions, with the vacuity, the emptiness, the evil, the worshiping of celebrities, of false prophets, and look where it's gotten us. It's gotten us on a downhill slide heading towards the abyss. And, President Trump has said that he's having to clean up the mess left to us by previous Democrats, including Obama. I mean, when you compare President Trump or even President Reagan to somebody like President Obama, to President Clinton, it's just mind-boggling, the difference. And the Democrats, it's not your father's Democrat Party anymore. I mean, they have gone so far left that they're almost indistinguishable from Marxism in the things that they support. And the primaries that are going on now, that are about to start with the caucuses and the voting for the Democratic Party, will give us a very, very clear insight into that if we haven't gotten it already. And I would recommend that people pay very, very close attention to that, because ultimately an election, the election we face in November, comes down, like every election, to a choice between two paths, between two standard bearers. It will be President Trump and the Republicans versus his and their Democrat opponents. And when you line up what the Democrats support and what the Republicans, as imperfect as they might be, what the Republicans support, I don't see any problem with choosing President Trump and the Republicans.
Well, I second your emotion. I like to point out it's true, but it's also kind of funny. I met my first. Let's see, how do I get this right now? I met my first Republican at the age of 25, and I met my first well, never mind. But my point is, I never had to do anything that I found morally repugnant. I simply accepted the fact that a lot of stories that I was covering for a living were not going to work out the way I hoped they would. Chowka, what are the chances we will do with this opportunity what begs to be done, what needs to be done, or will we just drift deeper into what you correctly entering our finale right now with Peter Chowka. Peter, I remember how that little flash of autobiography goes now. I met my first, have I forgot it again? I met my first Christian at the age of 5, and my first Democrat at the age of 25. That loses its mystery when you point out that I was born in Baltimore, Maryland, and the Democrats were in charge, and they were normal. I can't tell you how disappointed I am with the Democrats that we used to look up to we used to revere them. Now, look at them. They slavishly follow orders from the far left, betraying the fact that they care more about their sinecure, more about their job, than they care about their nation, unto which they swore allegiance. Your turn.
You know, Barry, I knew some great Democrats in my life, including the late Senator George McGovern of South Dakota, who ran for president in 1972. He was a great patriot, a bomber pilot in World War II, a PhD, a brilliant man, and a scholar. I'd like to leave you and our audience with this thought, Barry. You know, I think it's impossible to predict what's ahead of us this year and in our future. This, as I said at the outset, is a flashpoint period we're in now, and anybody who says they can predict what's going to happen, including in the election, I think they're a false prophet, because we just don't know. It was Shakespeare who wrote, "Comparisons are odious." Actually, he wrote odorous, but it's concluded that he meant odious. I would paraphrase that predictions at this point are odious, and all we can do is to try to do our part. Many people I'm working with, my colleagues, my associates, are seasoned individuals like you and me. We've got a few years on us here, but we're still at it. The editor of American Thinker, for example, is 3 years older than me, and he's working 7 days a week to try to get the truth out. There are many patriots out there like that, Barry, and the people in the audience who are also patriots have to look for and find and get in touch with that information, share it with friends, family, and colleagues so that we make the right decisions and take the right actions at the grassroots level in this year ahead, because literally our lives and our future depend on it. That's my opinion.
I think you're absolutely safe on first, second, third, and home. The question is, we're playing our song now. We're entering our finale, last segment. Will we live up to what you recognize as necessary and what I recognize as necessary? But we just don't have the troops, apparently, that we used to. Well, let me get your view. We'll be right back. We don't. I will use this to try to importune you to give me another chance, another date, not too far down the road. We need what you have to say, and we need it now. Thank you very, very much, Peter Chowka.